Hello and welcome back to the Layback podcast. Joining us today is Brendan Lawry. Brendan Lawry just finished his first year as a graduate student at Lewis up in Illinois. It's a D2 school outside of Chicago. Brendan successfully completed his comeback from UCL repair. I've known Brendan now for a bit. I actually recruited him back when I was coaching at Eckerd College down in St. Pete. I recruited him out of Waubonsie Community College, again, a school in the suburbs of Illinois. We got him down to St. Pete. Unfortunately, I guess unfortunately might not be the best word. I had a really good opportunity to move on and develop Flex Pro Grip, but unfortunately I didn't get to coach Brendan while I was at Eckerd. But a couple years later, ends up with a bit of an elbow issue, transfers, and I would say we reunited, but I don't think we ever fully lost contact in the process. But Brendan gave me a ring about some of his elbow issues. We tried to keep all those things sorted out the best we could. Eventually got him on Flex Pro Grip, got him in a really good rehab setting, and he was able to make his comeback in about 9 months to the mound. And through one inning in the team's conference championship journey, sadly, they fell just short. But here to talk about all of it is Brendan. So, Brendan, I'll pass it over to you. I also don't know if I've ever actually called you by your first name, so this might be a little bit different and a fun conversation to have.
Yeah, I mean, usually my first name is only for academic settings. Everybody calls me Lowry by my last name, but I'm all right with it. It's all right.
All right, man. So a few schools under the belt already. We can talk about the elbow stuff here in a bit, but what's the journey been like going from high school, staying local, JUCO ball, going to the beach in Florida for a couple of years, living some summer camp life, and
Yeah.
now effectively right back home?
Yeah, I mean, in high school, I mean, I wasn't very much of a pitcher. I played more first base than pitch, but I kind of felt that I was definitely had a better career on the mound in the future, and I think it turned out to be true, but you never know. But I ended up going to JUCO. I went to Waubonsie Community College, which is a D3 JUCO in Sugar Grove, Illinois. I chose that school because of the fact that they are an NPA school, which is National Pitching Association or Tom House. That's how most people recognize NPA. But I just thought I had been on that program for a while in high school, and I thought that it would be a good fit for me to develop as a pitcher and move on. And then I ended up at Eckerd College, where you and Bo recruited me. And I had a very successful first year there. My second year, I was dealing with elbow issues pretty much the whole time. And then near the end, I kind of blew out and then had surgery that summer. And then now I'm at Lewis, and I've been recovering for almost a year, I guess. And I'm looking forward to my last year in college ball.
That's right. The star-studded six-year senior. Never
Yeah.
thought you'd see one, but now they're all over the place and you
Yeah.
get to live that life.
Yeah, I burned my med red with my one inning pitch. So, I mean, I could have come back for a seventh or eighth, I guess, but we're sticking with six.
Probably the right way to do it. I remember even back when I was at Dayton, I had the opportunity for a sixth year, and I thought to myself at that time, when they were few and far between, there might be like two 6 years in the entire country.
Yeah.
I just thought to myself, this is not for me. I don't want to be in a position where I feel like I'm babysitting the freshmen.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's a lot more commonplace nowadays with COVID, which is how I have eligibility. But I mean,
Right.
even if I didn't have COVID, or I guess my second COVID year from year in college, I guess I probably would have taken my med red this year and just come back for my last one.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. Well, I think it's cool that you brought up the NPA stuff right away, and you even made a decision based on arm care or development early on, even at a to go to a small JUCO in Illinois. So you've been exposed to the arm care world, the arm health world very early on. And kind of how have you seen that change or maybe adopted changes in your own routines over time?
I would say my routine changed the most going from junior college to Eckerd just because obviously Eckerd isn't an NPA school, which is fine. I mean, I had the decision to go there and made it, but I mean, I definitely incorporated the things that I thought were essential from NPA to Eckerd, and I would kind of like do I guess, maybe a hybrid program during my 2 years there. And I mean, my first year, I was very healthy. I didn't really have any arm issues at all, and I threw a ton. So I think it worked for the most part.
And then what do you think maybe fell off in year two? If you can even say fell off, or was it really just workload was crazy, you never really stopped throwing, you didn't have that like undulating cycle? What do you think it might have been?
I mean, I stuck to my program pretty well. I think my biggest mistake was like I never stopped throwing. Even like when I went home for the summer, like right away I was back in the facility throwing, which I mean was it's on me, but I mean I eventually had to give it a rest after my first doctor's appointment. And then I rehabbed throughout my fall of 2023 and came back and I threw like 30 innings, but it just wasn't great. Like I didn't really have very much control over where the ball was going. I was hitting a lot of guys, but I mean, I had a little bit of success at the end when I was mostly pain free and then obviously not pain free at the very end.
Prior to the final blowout.
Yeah.
So when you were going through that kind of up and down during that 2023 season, when you were trying to fight through it, were you also dealing with velo fluctuations along with the control issues, or was it just you didn't know how you'd feel on a given day when you'd pick up a baseball?
The velo was kind of usually there. I guess the hardest I threw was in my worst outing. But I topped 89 and it was just like I was usually 85 to 87, 88, and it was more so control issues for me, which was always like I haven't had the best control throughout my career, but I mean, I can usually hone it in for a while throughout an outing.
Right. Obviously, the way you throw the really low sidearm slot, big lefty, that isn't always the most conducive to being a spot hitter or a
Yeah.
Picasso on the corners.
Yeah.
But when you can't generate chases or be effectively wild, when you're missing each pitch by a foot, 2 feet, that's when the real issues arise. So I totally get it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a strikeout guy either. Like maybe at JUCO I was, but when I got to Eckerd, I found out very quickly, and even in summer ball in the Northwoods, that like I need to find a way to get outs with what I can do, and it's probably not going to be a ton of strikeouts. So just
Totally.
kind of adapting to better hitters, I guess.
That's part of it. I do want to hit back on the NPA stuff because although Tom House was the true pioneer in this arm care world, he kind of gets forgotten in the newer age conversations.
I
Of course,
completely
there's
agree with that.
still coaches, there's biomechanists that always call on Tom House. But if you have a conversation with other guys on your team at Lewis or when you were at Eckerd, I'm sure the grand majority don't even know who Tom House is.
No,
So, yeah, exactly. So, what do you think was so impactful about that NPA program for you early on?
obviously, the whole goal of NPA is obviously to gain velo and doing it in a healthy manner, which I think is probably the mission statement of any pitching organization like Driveline or Tread, anything like that. I think that their goal is to gain velo and doing it in a healthy manner. But I've just had felt that NPA actually did that. I'm not saying that Driveline or Tread doesn't do that. I've just never been a part of their programs. So I don't know. I just felt like being in it's a very regimented like program. Like we're doing the same thing every day. We're doing our POWs. We're doing uh, our entire warm up that is very scapular based, and then we're doing our joint integrity every day, which is our arm care basically. And I just felt that it was a good program for me, and I liked having the structure during my practice days.
And how old were you when you first got exposed to it?
Oh, I was young when I first got exposed to it. I was probably 14. I was playing for a guy named Mark Sheehan, who is basically I'd call him like at that time like the Midwest NPA regional guy. I'm not really sure how to describe it, but I was 14 playing for him, and then I came back to it probably when I was probably around a senior in high school, like 17 or 18, and then I did it. I've done it ever since.
I know it isn't in vogue, but I would highly encourage anybody to see where the pitching world was when NPA kind of came on the scene because it really was what pushed the industry forward with a lot of what we're seeing from whether it's Texas Baseball Ranch, the Armory in Florida, Tread, Driveline, any of those places. Tom House was a part of what created this revolution, especially in the hardest throwers in the game, especially the ones that are domestically born in the States. It really is some cool stuff. I like seeing the ties from NPA and the exposure I've had from it over the years. Because truthfully, like, yeah, there's a lot of great stuff in it. It just for some reason has kind of become less popular. Maybe because there is some of the like less data behind it now, or they haven't stayed up to date with some of what other programs are doing, whether it is pitch design or those other things. It really was built on the art form of what Tom House implemented for himself way back in the day, which, I mean, nothing wrong with that.
No, I
It's
mean,
just the fork in
yeah,
the road.
I think like the biggest rifts that I've seen between like NPA and other basically programs, I would say, is like it's very time like it's time consuming to do NPA. Like the warm up takes like a half an hour to do. It's just like if you're not fully bought in and you basically half ass it, I don't think like you will gain very much from it. And the second biggest thing is the weighted ball programs are way different from each other. Just like
Mm.
in NPAs, there's only two plyos. It's a 2 pound and a 1 pound, and then the rest are like heavier or lighter baseballs that you use to throw. And you do the biggest thing for NPA is weighted ball holds and then throws, which I don't think I've seen anybody do, but I'm sure it's out there somewhere.
Yeah, holds were they had their moment back in like the mid 2000s and I feel like they've kind of fallen off since. I just had Tim Campos on the podcast pretty recently and that's one of the things that he talked about. Tim Campos is the director of player development out at the Albuquerque Baseball Academy, but he was a part of some of the early seminars that were held out at the Texas Baseball Ranch and he mentioned when holds were like the big new thing that were getting brought to the table in like 2006, 2007, 2008. And there were big leaguers that saw a lot of success from it in their rehab.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would even tell you when I was doing my shoulder rehab, I incorporated holds in my shoulder rehab, and that helped me significantly. But I feel like now those holds have kind of become more of an as needed basis as opposed to an overall prescription to all athletes.
We had everybody at Wabanzi, position players, pitchers doing like we call them 3-2s. So basically you do three holds and two throws for every weight that you have in your weighted ball kit. And I mean, I don't think we had very many arm injuries at Wabanzi. I won't say that it's foolproof. They're definitely you can definitely get hurt doing NPA, but I mean, the overall success I thought was pretty good at Wabanzi at least.
Yeah, and I think maybe how we can round out this conversation is by saying when you go all in on a program, you're generally going to get good benefit from it.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
yeah, and that's kind of what you guys had at Wabanzi, which I think is awesome in conversations with Coach Rodney Lopez over there. When everybody is on an extremely structured program and they know exactly what's asked for them, and it's scheduled into the routine or the practice every single day, guys are going to nail it. And
Yeah,
that's kind of the best recipe for success when there's no real questions about what needs to be done. And then it's a part of also the team culture. Like you did it as a freshman, so you knew exactly what to do when you were a sophomore, and then you could teach the freshmen,
yeah,
and it's just a never ending cycle at that point.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, now we can jump into your personal career, what's been going on with the arm. And I know we talked a little bit about it offline when we were trying to figure out the exact timeline or how we're going to cover your story about the ups and downs of your rehab. But one of the things that I think is funny or unique is almost the biggest struggle of anything you had going on was getting the actual diagnosis for why your elbow hurt so much. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to use that as the jumping off point, but kind of take us through it all.
Yeah. So basically, I mean, I was coming off a successful season where I had definitely thrown the most out of any year I'd been in college because my first year was canceled. And then my second year was kind of limited in games. I think I only ended up throwing like 45 or 50 innings. And then I played summer ball and I went into fall ball at Eckerd where they had canceled the year before in 2021. So we definitely played, I think, a little bit more than usual in the fall just because we needed the reps and we needed, I like, kids hadn't played in 2 years. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, we threw a lot. I don't even know how many innings I threw in that fall. And then it was different for me coming from Illinois to Florida because like the shutting down period is definitely a lot shorter, or I would say non-existent, just because I mean, like we played probably until maybe near the end of November, and then you have December, and we're coming back January 2nd to throw live for a February 1st game. So it's just like I think that was one of the issues that I had in terms of not staying healthy in my second year. But my first year, I felt great. I threw a lot, and that after that, I continued to throw in the summer and started feeling elbow pain and ended up going to the doctor. And my first diagnosis was ulnar nerve subluxation, which I mean, I didn't have a problem with. I went through the PT process. I went through a throwing program and just came back, I think probably after winter break. I was throwing live over winter break and came back in January to throw live and was just still feeling a lot of pain in my elbow and kind of just took a step back and kind of went through another throwing program. And I think my first start was probably in March, probably middle of March. And then I was having like some 3 inning rehab starts. And then I had to have a weekend start because they needed somebody. And I think I went 5 innings. And then the next week against Tampa, I only went two because I had a very bad outing. And then I went 8 against St. Leo. And I think that kind of big jump in workload kind of took me over the edge because the next week I came out and had a blowout against Embry Riddle. After that, I was at the point of like, do I see a doctor in Florida or do I just wait till I come home after I graduate? So I ended up seeing a doctor in Florida and they could not fit me in an MRI before I left. So I came home and found a doctor and got an MRI. And after they told me it was partially torn, I think you saw that too. I sent it to you. And you said that my best bet was UCL repair to come back in a timely manner instead of the 12 to 14, which is TJ. And I ended up in the post surgical, like kind of like bionic arm brace for I think 3 or 4 weeks before I ended up scheduling surgery for I think it was August 22nd. So it took me like 3 months to eventually get my second diagnosis and then get surgery. But I mean, I'm glad it worked out the way it did and I was able to come back.
Right. That was such a weird series of events from you knew you were hurt, they couldn't
Yeah.
get you in Florida. You go home, they get you in, they see you, but then you had that crazy long time where they were just like, "No, we'll put you in a brace and maybe you'll feel better in a little bit." I remember going back and forth with you constantly of,
Yeah.
"Well, yeah, dude, no shit, you're gonna feel better because you're in a brace and you can't throw. You're gonna lose some range of motion, but you're not gonna get stronger. You could pick up a ball again because your elbow might feel better just because there's no swelling in there anymore. You
Yeah.
haven't stressed it." So I remember that like that freaked me out a little bit, honestly, when you were taking me through your process. But yeah, you nailed that discussion we were having constantly about whether to go TJ or go repair, because I think that was at a time where repair had become really popular, but I don't think players or the student athletes or those who were actually experiencing the surgery
Yeah.
fully understood what made an individual a candidate for the surgery. Because I
Yeah.
remember, like, even if you go back through our texts, you can look at the long descriptions of the you fit the mold if XYZ,
Yeah.
or you're going to qualify for reconstruction if ABC.
Yeah.
And the constant, like, back and forth of what you needed to tell your doctor versus leave up for their interpretation. We talked ad nauseum about whether you had a proximal injury or a distal injury.
Yeah. It
And
ended up being
then,
distal.
yep. And then whether it should be PRP or stem cell or do something like that. And we went back and forth of saying, like, dude, with a distal injury, like, you can try PRP, but the rate of return from that is pretty much non-existent. You're
Yeah.
literally playing the lottery if you do that. So that I remember that was a fun's the wrong word. That was certainly a hectic timeline of communication. But
Yeah.
I mean, as of now, it sure seems like the doctor nailed it.
No,
With the
I was really,
repair.
I mean, basically like when I went back for my appointment after the brace era,
Mhm.
um, she basically did like the same tests on me as she did the first time. Like my elbow was still kind of, I guess, lax. Like she pressed like the external force on it and it was still like not, it was still able to move while
Mhm.
I was after the brace. So she was like, all right, like, I think we should do surgery. I think you're a good candidate for UCL repair. And I was like, that's originally what I basically wanted. So I was all for it.
Now let's get into the actual rehab process. So you finally had your surgery in the beginning of August. Had you already decided you were going to go to Lewis at that point, or where did Lewis even get in the mix?
So yeah, coming out of Eckerd, I had to grad transfer because Eckerd does not have graduate school. I kind of wanted to come home. I would have stayed in Florida. I mean, I didn't really get much attention in the Florida schools, but that's all right. But I had reached out to University of Illinois Springfield, and I had committed there, and they knew that I was having some arm issues, but they still, I guess, wanted me because I had the 6 year. The day like the head coach there, Ryan Copeland, who's at NIU now, left, and he informed me the day of. So I mean, it's not that it wasn't on him at all, but the day that he left, I was like running a tournament, and some kid I knew from Lewis was like, "Yeah, do you just want to come play for Lewis?" And I was like, "I guess. I mean, I don't know. Like, put me into contact, I guess." And so I told our coach Mike Fusco that I was probably going to need surgery, and he still took a chance on me, and that's where I am.
So you made the decision on Lewis after the Illinois Springfield, but still prior to surgery.
Yeah, I still hadn't had surgery. I had surgery on August 22nd, so I got surgery, and then probably I think like 6 or 7 days later, school started. But
I'm
it's all right. I'm all online for grad school, so I was just
Yeah,
tired.
all online, but for some reason you just forgot what Zoom looked like.
I there's no Zoom classes. It's asynchronous.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, so you literally are fully on your own.
Yeah.
And then what was that like joining a new team while rehabbing?
I have a good relationship, I think, with all my teammates. I mean, they were very welcoming. I definitely was weird coming from Florida back to Illinois, but I mean, it was warm in the fall at least, and then it got very cold. But I mean, just the rehab, like, I don't think I was able to garner a great relationship with everybody really until the spring, just because I wasn't at any lifts. Like, I didn't do I think it's called Warrior Week, which is basically Hell Week, I would say. I was at PT all the time, so it's just like I was on my own. But like I would go to practices and be there, but it's just like I'm not throwing, I'm not doing any drills. I'm just there. So I feel like when springtime rolled around and I was able to coach first base for the Flyers this year, is really when I became close with everybody.
That makes sense. I'm sure it felt a bit like you were on an island to an extent in the fall. I mean, you could go to practices and all that, but your work had to be mostly solo because it's
Yeah.
just how do you get your arm healthy?
Yeah, I mean, it was basically like I was in a slinger brace for the first like 2 months of me being at Lewis. So that's all anybody ever knew was he's hurt. So it's fine. I mean, I think I started throwing right around when winter break rolled around. So like
Hmm.
maybe like right before December, maybe like 10th or 15th around then. And then when everybody came back was when I was like, oh, he throws like it's just like all right.
Yeah.
Uh, I was definitely happy with the results that I had like throughout the spring, and you were able to give me guidance on my throwing program and just trying to be successful off the mound again. But we got there.
Yeah, and what did rehab actually look like for you? I know you obviously had Flex Pro Grip in the toolbox, but were you getting a lot of soft tissue work done? I know that kind of differs from athletic trainer to athletic trainer, PT to PT, how much tissue work they actually do versus loading. Like, when was lifting reintroduced for you? Was that early on in the process? Was that later?
I wouldn't say early, but I wouldn't say late. Like I felt like when I started lifting, I thought my body was ready to start lifting again. The first probably like 3 or 4 weeks of PT, I was still in the brace. So they'd take me out of it and I would do like PVC curls with just
Hmm.
like trying to get the range of motion back. And they would scrape me or massage me pretty much every time I was there. Shout out to Athletico Naperville for that. I really liked my physical therapist. His name is Mike. He was a great dude, but everybody there helped me out a lot just with getting back to where I was strength wise. I think like any PT, like we start out slow, curls, light triceps, some lat pull downs, just basic, really basic movements that just try to get my strength back and the movement back there. But I mean, we progressed, started doing a lot of hip stuff at the end, more core stuff, just trying to get everything back to where it was. But no, I didn't really have very many issues with PT and like dealing with pain or anything like that. There was really
Yeah.
no like major setbacks, I would say.
It's quite the surprise, honestly, and it's a testament to you putting in the work in a really good system that went into it, a good communication, everything, because setbacks happen.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you were effectively able to circumvent the majority of them, or at least anything major.
I mean, there was definitely times where like I was like, man, like just my elbow doesn't feel good today. Like maybe I'll bang like the push-ups today or something like that. But it's just like I feel like there was not a time where I had to like tell my PT where I was like, dude, I just can't like work out today. Like I was definitely able to push through some of it.
Hmm.
And there was definitely some times where there was a time that I didn't tell you about where I was playing hacky sack in my brace and I accidentally hit the hacky sack with my left arm. And I was like, oh my God, that hurt so bad.
Probably a good thing you didn't tell me about that because that would have been one of those you're an idiot moments.
Yeah. But no, the next day at PT, I was like, oh man, my arm hurts. Like I don't know what to do. So I was like, Mike, can you like massage me a little bit more today? He was like, sure.
So your biggest setback in the entire process was because you went too hard playing hacky sack.
Yeah. During the PT phase, I would say the throwing, like moving up in intensity for throwing during the spring was probably one of my bigger setbacks, just like pain wise or like having to deal with pain, like taking a step back.
Yeah, let's talk about that because we were in pretty solid communication throughout your throwing process, but I know you used me more as an additional resource. I wasn't there with you every day, of course. I'm down in Georgia, you're up in Illinois. It was more making sure the plan that you had made sense or talking about how to add intensity.
Yeah.
So what did all that look like for you? How'd you go about it?
So basically, I was trying to come back in a manner that was safe for my arm, but also as quick as possible. So basically, after my initial throwing program of, the basic 30 feet, then back to 60 feet at like 50%, I think it was every 3 weeks, I would move up in intensity. So I went from 50 to 70 to 80 and then to 90 and then to 100, all in 3 week increments and then every week the throws would go up. So it went from 5 to 10 to 15 to 20 and then up to 30. And basically, I think the biggest setback that I had was from 80 to 90 was the biggest, like, oh man, my arm just feels terrible today. Like, I only had 5 throws and it just does not feel good. So I
Hmm.
think like listening to your arm is like the biggest thing I would say for anybody coming off of TJ or UCL repair. Just if you don't feel good, there's obviously a reason for it, and you should probably listen to your arm.
I do want to call on one thing. I know you had the luxury of a pocket radar there with you. So when you're talking about intensities,
Yeah.
especially as you pushed a little bit further on and you're
Mhm.
throwing at these percentages, you were at least able to monitor that with velocity. So you had a good idea of what your effort should be producing, correct?
Yeah. So basically, I think probably like usually at the beginning of a phase and then near the end of the phase, I'd get our radar gun out and just kind of gauge like how hard is it for me to throw at, say, 72 miles an hour, which was probably around maybe 75% of what I did. I did 88 miles an hour was my benchmark. Just, I feel like that was a good number to where I was able to hit it before, and that's where I want to be after. So I used 88 and then just did the percentages based off that.
Yeah, super smart. I think that's incredibly important to one, you set yourself a goal that was not just achievable, but also extremely reasonable. It's where you had been before. You know you can have success if you reach 88 again. It's not like you're reaching like crazy to get there, but also you're not setting the bar low for yourself.
Yeah.
And then that gave you objective numbers to work off of throughout the entire process.
Yeah.
So, applause to you on that. Good for you. But another thing that I want you to dig into a little bit is something that you and I had talked about a lot was understanding how to incorporate the high, low, and medium days throughout your throwing process as you kind of advanced. Of
Yeah.
course, I can talk about it, but I think it's way more impactful for you to share.
So I think we talked about like I think it was around 90% of my effort value was when I started incorporating the high, low, and medium days into my throwing program. And I was still only at 3 days a week. So I would have a high intent day, and then I'd go to a low intent day, and then I'd have a medium day. I think my order was Monday was low intent, Wednesday was high intent, and then Friday was medium intent. And then I'd take the 2 weekend days off when I was still only on 3 days a week. And then I usually try and get off the mound on my low and medium intent days, just because that's when my arm was feeling the best and I'd be encouraged to throw more those days. And then when I bumped it up to 4 days, I think at 90% and then into 100%, I would do Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, Saturday. We did a back-to-back day just to get my arm used to that again. And I would go low, high, medium, low. And I would start spinning stuff on the low and medium days as well off the mound. So I think just trying to incorporate things slowly was our best bet on returning to play as soon as possible and being ready for hitters when I got there. And then I think after about 4 weeks, because I had a deload week after my first high intensity pen, I came back after that deload week through to live hitters, and then probably 2 weeks after, maybe a week and a half later, I threw in a game.
Yeah, so I mean that part was a really quick turnaround, but I know that's something you had your sights set on. You were kind of willing to push yourself towards that. Because I know you wanted to compete for a championship. That was one of the goals you had from the beginning. I it's not something I would necessarily recommend to everyone to have such a quick turnaround from a
I
high
mean,
intensity pen to getting back in game. But obviously, you were able to get through it, and you made that as a business decision effectively, and you trusted the work you put in to get to that point.
yeah, I feel like I wouldn't tell anybody younger than 23 to do that, but I'm old. I don't think I have a ton of time left in baseball. Who knows? You never know if I get the velo up, but I really wanted to try and help my team other than coaching first base. So I told our coach, hey, like he asked me, "Are you good for an inning this at any point this weekend?" And I was like, "Yeah, whatever you need, just throw me in. Probably have 25 pitches. I'll cap myself at 25 pitches." And I ended up throwing the last inning of our year, and we did not score the 2 runs that we needed to tie the game. But it was a really good run that we had, and I'm happy that I was able to be a part of it in
Yeah,
some sort.
and your inning was super successful. 10 pitches, 9 strikes, 87 to 89 with the heater. I'd say that's pretty good. You hit your goal. You
Yeah,
beat the 88.
yeah. No, I was happy with the velo. I wasn't really expecting an 89 or an 88, but I don't know, probably adrenaline. I think I've come out of the pen one time in my college career, so it was definitely new for me. Lot more adrenaline coming out of the pen than getting a start.
Yeah, I bet. A completely different mindset.
Yeah.
I do want to go back to you talked about those low, high, medium days. And I know one of the things that you and I had talked about was treating the low, high, and medium, separating both volume and intensity. So low for you wasn't necessarily like completely low. It wasn't necessarily the fewest throws at the lightest intensity. It was just less effort went into those throws. Or you weren't trying to hit a number on that day, but you could accumulate work or accumulate volume. And then really your high intensity days, that Wednesday and that 3 day a week, and then I guess still the Wednesday when you went to 4 day a week, it was more about how do you prep yourself to make the hardest throws you can possibly make. And that started, I mean, heck, when we first talked about that system, your goal was to throw 80 miles per hour 3 times the first time you did it.
Yeah.
Then I think we boosted it to maybe 4 to 5 the next week. And then like awesome. Try to make 6 throws total and maybe 3 at 80 and three
Yeah.
above 78. So
Yeah.
we attacked it on both sides. And I think you covering that from a player perspective could be very useful.
Yeah, like I kind of when you told me that stuff, I kind of looked at it like a start basically. Like I know that my velo is not going to be 88, 89 every pitch. Like I'm going to be 84, 85 some days. Like I have to work with what I have. So basically, I'm not trying to put my 100% effort into every single throw that I'm having when I'm 7 months off of UCL repair. It's like basically just like trying to be around my goal is best for me because I'm not trying to blow my arm out. I'm not facing a hitter. I'm not even throwing to a catcher. I'm playing catch with somebody down the line. So there's no adrenaline. You're in your own head the entire time. I think setting small goals and achieving small goals is a really good way to go about going through your rehab or at least your throwing program just because small steps lead to a bigger picture, I would say. Like I definitely wasn't ready for a start. I wasn't ready to go out there and throw more than one inning, so that's what I was preparing for.
And I think it's way easier to walk away from each day with a smile or the motivation to keep going when you break it into those small steps. I think this has been a reoccurring theme of the podcast so far, especially when talking to the physical therapist, is the people that seem to face the toughest mental side of the rehab are the ones that are constantly looking at it as the 12, 14, 15 month grind as opposed to the mini milestones along the way, like
Yeah.
executing a push up, making that first throw, and then whatever, playing catch with a partner, different things like that, that really are major milestones, although they might not seem like it.
Like it definitely took me like a while from like it felt like a long time. I will say my rehab was definitely shorter than others, but it felt like a long time. So I can't imagine what TJ people go through.
Hmm.
But I was throwing 75% during like our second week in Nashville, and then I was at 100% during our second to last week. So it's like it took me basically a whole season to go from I probably around 60% to 100%. So just very small goals throughout that whole season, and I definitely had the support of my teammates. Like I think like they definitely supported me and they wanted to see me pitch. Obviously, like I have a big reputation coming in from Florida. I threw well, and now I'm back at a D2 in Illinois. So it's like what if the kid just sucks? Like, is he gonna be the same? Like, I don't know. I definitely felt the love and support from my teammates, I would say. They had my back the whole time.
That's awesome. And was anyone else rehabbing with you, or was it a solo grind?
Not per se with me. There's another player on our team who had UCL repair, but he had it in April. So I was probably 4 or 5 months behind him. Probably four. But he was a freshman, so I feel like we kind of just bounced off each other with like I'm the more experienced player, like I'm trying to help him pitch right now, whereas he might help me like in the rehab process. There was one other shoulder guy who came back recently, and I'm not sure where he's at right now. We're in summer, but definitely Luke Brown. He's the other UCL repair guy. He's a young guy, so I'm definitely looking forward to helping him this next year.
And then there's one more piece that I want to go back to when we were talking about those high, low, medium days, before we get too far removed from it. I want you to go into a little bit about how you broke up the days where all you focused on was the result, like the ball coming out of your hand. It's all you cared about was what the radar gun said or actually putting effort into it versus the days where you were trying to move the way you know you need to move on maybe
Mhm.
those lower intensity days.
Yeah.
How'd you break that up?
Basically, I would go from the medium day to my weekend where I would have off and I would probably just do a workout or maybe nothing just to have a reset. But my low days, which was my first day, I would basically just focus on like not hitting spots, but just hitting my partner in the chest, basically, and throwing my off speed at least for a strike or have at least good action on it. Just like small things that I know will pay off in the end that I've done before in my career, but I need to do again. And my high intent days was just like I definitely cared about the radar gun, but I would tell the person who was radaring, tell me when I hit so and so number, just so like I wasn't like thinking about it every single throw, just like I was only thinking about trying to move up in intensity with my body and my arm and not hitting a number. I would
Mm.
say focusing on the mechanics part more than solely hitting that number is I think more important. Like if I didn't hit a number that day, whatever, like if I got close, I'm happy.
So do you think that helped you maintain the movement work that you did like earlier in the week, or it kind of helped you stay within yourself rather than like constantly chasing?
Um, I would definitely say there was a rift between my low intent days and my high intent days. Like I could feel my body moving a little bit differently just because I'm throwing at a higher intensity. But I think just it's hard. Like I don't know, it's way different throwing on flat ground than the mound. So like my flat ground work, the difference between throwing low intensity and high intensity is a lot different. But throwing off the mound, I think, is very similar. That's what I would say to that question. I don't, it's hard for me to describe. There's definitely a big difference between the two on flat ground, but when I'm on the mound, it feels the same. Like there's definitely more stress on my body, but the arm action feels the same. My lower body feels the same. So that's how I'd respond to that question.
I mean, I suppose that's fair, seeing how the surfaces are different. One is sloped downward, one is you're
Yeah,
just moving across a flat surface.
yeah. I feel like my body is more prone to putting in a lot more effort on flat ground just because I know that if I miss my spot, it doesn't really matter. But if I'm throwing to a catcher and I miss my spot by a foot or 2 feet, he's definitely going to be pissed off. So definitely, I think honing it in more on the mound, just like not even thinking about the mechanics or hitting a number. It's just like, man, I'm pitching right now. Like, just go out there and throw.
Yeah, how good did that feel when the throwing program shifted from just shuffling and tossing at a partner to towing a rubber again?
I was happy that you said like, you always say to me like, you make your money on the mound, so you might as well do a lot of mound work. But I was kind of ecstatic throwing on the mound, even if it's just fastballs. Like obviously they're low intensity, but it felt good to be off the mound more often than not. My arm usually felt pretty good when I was off the mound. There were some days where it's obviously cold in the spring in Illinois and my arm is just not feeling great, but for the most part, I would say that my mound work went well and my arm felt better off the mound than on flat ground.
Do you have any idea as to why that might be the case? Like why do you think the mound felt better?
Maybe because I'm using my lower body more. I don't really know. I've been told that my lower body is not good, but maybe it's just because I use it ever so slightly on the mound.
You just capture energy the right way.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, we got to get you turning right a little bit more.
Oh, I know. I mean, I'm gonna be the first person to say that my mechanics aren't great, but it's effective. So I mean, that's why I've stuck with it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to argue against the results you've put up. Maybe like you said, aside from that 1 year at Eckerd, but that's more likely because of the injuries that you were dealing with as opposed to your actual ability.
Yeah, I mean, I had some success my senior year at Eckerd. It just like I would literally hit like three guys in a row, and then like hone it back in. So I don't know if it was like a mental block or maybe I was just changing things because I didn't want my arm to hurt, but I'm not really sure.
Yeah, but that's in the past now. So we'll flip the script a little bit and look into the future. So what do things look like from here? I know you told me you have some coaching that you might get into this summer, but it sounds like you're going to take the training route before getting into next year's fall season, correct?
Yeah. I'm in a deload right now just because of the intensity that I came back to pitching at. I'm in my deload for one more week. So after that, I'll probably try and do some live ABs slash summer ball maybe, and then possibly shut down right before maybe like a month return back in August and then be ready for fall ball.
Okay. And then what's the goal? Are you trying to get back on the bump as a starter, or is it like slow go, just whatever the team needs me? I know that's going to be your mentality, pitch however you're needed, but
Yeah.
what do you want?
I'd like to start. I mean, I don't know. I've never been a reliever, so I envision myself always as a starter. But I mean, if that's my role, that's my role. I don't know. I usually have shaky first innings, so hopefully I can start and maybe redeem myself in the second, third, and fourth.
Hey, well, as far as your Lewis career goes, your first inning has been great. So I
Yeah.
don't know. That might just be a thing of the past.
Yeah, we'll see.
I don't know, man. I feel like we ran through this pretty well. Is there any tricks of the trade that you feel like you need to share, something in the process that maybe we didn't discuss that you think is extremely important for the listeners to hear?
The one thing that I would say is when I was coming back to 100%, like I would definitely have some arm pain, like just in and around like my first bullpen, I was very, very sore after. But I got sick and I was taking Advil cold medicine, which had the active ingredient of Advil in it. And I was still throwing while I was sick, but I was also taking this cold medicine and it took like my pain away like within a week of like just randomly taking Advil cold medicine, which I didn't really mean to do, but I guess it happened. It like I definitely had a little bit of swelling after my first bullpen too, and it got rid of that. So I don't know. Maybe I needed to deload for another week to get rid of that swelling, but I wouldn't advise taking Advil all the time, but maybe you need it once or twice.
That's definitely a smart thing to hit on, which is understanding the role of those anti-inflammatories.
Yeah.
I am not a doctor, you are not a doctor either, but understanding what role they play, when they play it, and I think this goes back to what you were saying about listen to your body. If
Yeah.
your arm is swelling or if you feel sore, that's for a reason. And that pain or that discomfort can technically be a good thing if you put on your like glass half full hat,
Yeah.
because it's telling you how you need to either change what you're doing or adapt your programming. And it was unintentional for you, but like you said, maybe that was like the slap in the back of the head that you needed to be like, whoa, all right, maybe I need to adjust this. Maybe I'm pushing too hard. Maybe I need to take a break for a second. Like you said, that could have been the perfect time to deload. And yeah, Advil took the pain away, but of course, if you're constantly taking Advil, that's just going to mask everything that you're feeling.
Yeah, no, I have never taken Advil before a start or an outing, and I would not recommend anybody do so. But I don't like I was like, man, like my arm feels great this week, and like I was just really sore last week. Like, what happened? And I was like, oh, like I took cold medicine for 4 days in a row, twice a day. Like maybe that's why.
Maybe we'll live on that. So like when you weren't feeling great, how did you remedy it? Because you're not an Advil guy. Like what did you incorporate in your routine on days where you maybe didn't feel ready to go or you needed to climb out of the hole?
Yeah, so like days I would feel bad. If I had to throw that day, I would either try and take it a little bit lighter and then usually if I'm feeling like near my 90 and 100% eras of throwing, I would either hop on the Mark Pro or I would hop in one of our teammates the Hyper Ice, like the
Hmm.
inflatable thing. And I think those maybe it was a mental thing, but I think those helped me like just feel better throwing wise. And I mean, near the end, when I was throwing 100%, I would take one Advil right after an outing just so I could minimize like soreness and swelling to an extent, I would say. I haven't taken one since the end of the season, but I mean, my arm has felt good, so I'm happy.
Let's hit on something a little bit different. This might be a funny one. I know
Uh,
you said you remember it. The first time we ever spoke on the phone when I was recruiting you, I asked
yeah.
what you thought about Justin Fields heading to Chicago. So
Yeah.
now Caleb Williams headed to Chicago. How do you
Yeah.
feel about him?
I'm very excited again. I was excited about Justin Fields, and now I'm even more excited about Caleb Williams.
Is he going to complete the prophecy, send the Bears back to the promised land?
I think so. I have faith.
And then I suppose, how do you feel about Justin Fields now in Pittsburgh?
I will always root for Justin Fields. I still like Justin Fields. I think he's a very good person, and he's a very hard worker as an athlete. And I wish him nothing but luck, and I hope the Steelers win the AFC North.
There we go. Yeah, nothing but the best to Justin Fields. And I suppose I owe a thank you to him as well for that being the first conversation I ever had with you on a recruiting call.
Oh yeah, the boys are buzzing about Fields, huh? That's what I told.
Love it.
I was like, Mom, the guy from Ecker just texted me about Justin Fields. And she was like, what?
Is that how you knew Eckerd was going to be the spot?
Sort of. I guess I figured out Ecker was gonna be the spot when Bo put me on a timeline. I was like, gosh, like I guess I'll go to Eckerd. But
Well, I'm glad you said yes because that certainly made me feel good, and I know injury was never part of the plan, but
um,
I'm glad you enjoyed your time there.
yeah, no, I had a great time. I wouldn't trade those 2 years for anything. That was a really good time of my life, and I was happy that I got to have some success in the best conference in D2
That's
behind the
right.
behind the GLVC.
Yeah, yeah, you got to say that now. You got to say that now.
Yeah,
Brendan, I appreciate you hopping on with us today. Or it again feels super weird to say Brendan, so maybe for my own sake, I'll say Lowry. I
that's all
appreciate
right.
you hopping on today. This was awesome. Thank you for sharing your story. And oh, dude, I'm even gonna cut my outro to say, how does it feel to be viral?
It feels good, I guess. I don't know. I mean, it feels different because it's your post, so I think you're viral, not me.
Yeah, but you're the subject. You're the one getting all the comments. I'm even going to check it live right now to see where we're at. Hopefully, I don't get copyrighted for a song playing in the background. But let's see. You right now are at 77.4 thousand views for your return from UCL repair.
All right. Hopefully it garners some attention for the UCL repair surgery. I think Brock Purdy did a lot for it. Hopefully I can do a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, hey, you're well on your way. You're getting some comments, you're getting some views. Kids seem excited about your journey, at least when it's put to music and showcased in 30 seconds on Instagram.
Yeah. The journey was a lot longer than the video, but I love the video.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a fun one, and I think that's one of the first. It's the first time I feel like I really went viral because another one I just posted a picture of a guy throwing a change up that went nuts on Facebook.
Nice.
So it had nothing to do with that one.
No, I love that picture of me in in the shower thing. That thing's hilarious. I hated that thing.
Yeah, that was such a funny picture to receive from you. I can't believe I almost forgot to bring that up. I'm glad I had to throw that into the outro.
That thing sucks, but I mean it works very well. I think it was like $10 on Amazon. So if you have surgery, I would definitely recommend getting that thing.
Yeah, we got to get you a promo code for that thing.
No, I will not endorse that thing.
I don't know. This might be the most views that thing has ever gotten from anybody.
Yeah. I think I waited 3 days to shower. I would wash my hair, but I did not want to get in the shower with that thing on. I eventually did.
Yeah, proud of you. I'm
Yeah,
glad you re-entered the shower.
thank you.
So with that, I suppose we can go back to the outro.
All
Again,
right.
Lowry, thank you. This was awesome. I appreciate the laughs. I appreciate the candor. And of course, best of luck this summer with whatever youth team you coach. And then as you make your way back to the bump in the fall for the Lewis Flyers.
Thank you very much for having me. I will definitely be in contact, and I will definitely be using Flex Pro Grip throughout the rest of my rehab.
Well, I don't know if you can even call it rehab anymore throughout the rest of your chase to 100, right?
Nah, my goal is 92.
All right, I love it. That's right, smart objectives for
Yeah,
something attainable. We love it.
yeah.
So, all right, as Lowry picks up Flex Pro Grip again, his chase for 92, to all the listeners out there, I appreciate you laying back with us. See you next time.